Support for Wrong About Everything comes from Minnesota's credit unions. Credit unions are locally based, member-owned financial cooperatives that return earnings to members through higher savings rates, lower loan rates, and reduced fees. Visit mncun.org for more information.
Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of the Wrong About Everything podcast. I am deep in the clutches of the crud and GOP strategist Brian McDaniel.
I am Democratic strategist staying home to stay away from my sick colleagues, Javier Murillo.
And I am Minneapolis cultural correspondent reporting live with the flu, Allison Nessie.
And we are
wrong
about everything. Yeah.
We're a sorry lot. Javier is the valedictorian of this group right here.
Yeah, I know. Now I'm scared to go out. I was like, for hearing you guys' story, I was like, we're trying to decide what to do for New Year's Eve, but maybe I should just stay in and wear a mask.
Yeah, I'm just gonna stay home and watch movies with Jenny and the kids. Allison, you got any plans?
Well, I had plans, but I'm going to spare everyone from this new flu that I just read on NPR that from Minnesota Department of Health that the new flu is super contagious and super intense. So
Yay.
I can attest to both of them.
Yay.
Yay.
That's awesome.
I know.
Yeah.
We're going to end 25 the way it should end, which is and alone.
Right. Oh, and you're both vaccinated against the flu. Yeah, we talked about this earlier. Yeah, so it's like milder than it would be. I have forgotten to get vaccinated, so I was sort of half kidding about not going out tonight, but maybe I should.
Well, with seeing as though I have every disease known to man, it seems like they get me pretty early on all of my vaccination. So yes, I did get that, and today's the first day that I mean I felt it coming up to this, but today's the first day where I actually feel like pretty impaired by it. But
did you do a test to see if it's influenza?
Oh, I have not.
Yeah.
So self-diagnosis.
I haven't either, but I haven't had these body aches since the last time I had the flu, and so
yeah. Fun.
Yeah.
Well,
it's our end of year episode.
It is our end of year episode, but before that, I just want to welcome everybody to the Minnesota Credit Union Network studios, deep within the recesses of MBC studios here in Minneapolis. Though we are all remote at the time, our very capable and handsome producer Gabe Noah is pushing all the buttons back in the control room, and we appreciate you listening to our episode and watching us on YouTube as well. So we hope that that is something that you have been doing, and please send a link to a friend, subscribe. We would also love to get you as a Patreon supporter. We realize it was just Christmas. If this is not a good time, we understand that, but we would like you to become not a dick eventually. So when able, please consider doing that. And
patreon.com/wrongaboutEverythingpodcast.
Yep, that's where you can find us. We have many different levels, and we appreciate every single one of us. And plus, then when you see us, you can always say, "Hey, I'm not a dick," because that actually happens quite a bit. So that's always fun. I know that I'm going to be diving into the liquor cabinet tonight for New Year's Eve, and I want to thank our good friends at the Minnesota Licensed Beverage Association. Since 1952, Minnesota Licensed Beverage Association has been helping licensed beverage retailers in the state of Minnesota with information resources, educational programs, and government affairs services designed to promote and protect their business. All of their member retailers understand that with the MLBA, you are not alone. And you're not alone if you have a good bottle of bourbon or a frosty adult beverage. Now, because I'm staying home and drinking, I won't need the services of Bradshaw and Bryant. Their entire team of attorneys and staff is dedicated to providing the legal advice you need, combined with the service and personal attention you deserve. If you have questions about how they can assist you with a personal injury, wrongful death, or criminal defense matter, do not hesitate to contact them. Consultations are free. Please contact them at 800-770-7008 or at minnesotapersonalinjury.com. Now, I did actually have one of our listeners DM me with a legal question, one that I can't really answer that well, but they did reach out to Bradshaw and Bryant. I think that they are going to get some help there. So it's good. Yeah, I love it when a plan comes together. But as Javier said earlier, this is our end of year 2025 episode. We're each going to kind of take like a little bit of a spank and thank type stab at some of the bigger news items, for from 2025. So with that, I think we're going to start off with Allison, because Allison has the biggest news story of 2025.
Yeah. So for our end of year, as Brian said, each of us are gonna focus on kind of the biggest story in Minnesota politics and then national politics as well. And I wanted to start off by just the biggest story that impacted our state, our community, which was the assassination of Speaker Emerita Melissa Hortman on June 17th. I I can't. It feels, when we were texting about this as a group before the show, and Javier was like, "Oh my God, that was just this year." It does feel like it has been so long since June 14th, and I know we just acknowledged the 6-month anniversary of her assassination. And if you haven't yet, there was a story printed in Rolling Stone magazine, their online magazine, that did a really beautiful job of encapsulating just her essence as a woman, as a mom, as a wife, as a legislative caucus leader, just how down to earth she was, and how her life story really just shaped who she was as a legislator. It's a beautiful piece that summarizes, just again, I know I sound redundant, but it's hard to find the words still, 6 months later, to illustrate the loss that of her that will have on DFL politics, on state legislative politics. She was just an ever-present leader. She certainly was not the loudest person by any means. But she was the most consistent, and she had the respect of pretty much everybody in that building, Republican, Democrat, administrative, etc., because she showed up and she did the work, and she passed one of the most progressive agendas for families and low-income people in the state of Minnesota during the trifecta in 2023. And I think we're all at a bit of a loss of where to go to next and how to articulate an agenda, but she was so consistent through so many years of laying out an agenda that she felt people could win on and would work for all of Minnesota. And so I just want to acknowledge the impact that she has had, and the trauma and the sadness that we still feel and carry with us for those that either are sitting in office, have been in office, or work in and around the Capitol.
Allison, thanks for starting us off with that, because like you said when we were texting before, I was just like, oh my God, this year has been so damn long. But also, like, part of what when I think about June and that when that happened and everything that has happened since, I like it is absolutely the most impactful story, I think, for Minnesota and for the trajectory of our state. But I also think it's an impactful story nationally that never quite got the attention nationally. Certainly not, like, it never got the attention that you say that Charlie Kirk's assassination got. And And both of them are, I think, examples of a downward spiral. Um, and in fact, there's been almost like in some cases a deliberate trying to erase Hortman's assassination. Or if you go on Twitter, that cesspool, like there's so many people on the right who believe conspiracy theories about her assassination, including that the reason that including the one that Tim Walz was involved, and that it had to do with the vote on immigrant health care, when we know, police have, they found the culprit. He's in prison, and he's uh, not a Democrat, not and it was very predictable, and so it's been quite the freaking year. But
Well,
yeah,
and
going back.
if I could just jump in too, I mean, my parents can tell you exactly where they were when Kennedy got shot. And I can remember exactly where I was for 9/11. And I think that in my life, and probably with your lives as well, we will never forget where we were when we heard about Speaker Hortman and her husband and their dog being assassinated. They're so closely tied to Senator John Hoffman and his wife Yvette. Hoffman is doing great. He announced he's running again, so that's fantastic. But Melissa Hortman, I mean, everyone who is in elective office has an impact, but it's not always a lasting impact. And I think that Melissa Hortman, her legacy is going to be one of the greater ones in Minnesota history, and not just because she was assassinated, though that is what we're talking about here. But she impacted a lot of people's lives. I've known her since before either of us were in politics, and this is just unbelievably sad. And for the Twitter warriors out there who are talking stupid, um, Melissa Hortman isn't a political punching bag. She is not a movement. She was a person, and a person that the three of us knew extremely well, and that we're extremely sad that she's gone.
Yeah. And just say one thing about Melissa that I wish people really knew who didn't know her. She was really funny.
Yeah.
She was really funny. She was very kind, but like smart, um and sometimes funny in a very biting way. And swore like a sailor. Just it was her humor that would really come across when you're working with her on any given issue, because like it's like how we relate to each other um through humor, and having that level of comfort with people to do that, I think is a sign of enormous emotional intelligence. And I just am gonna miss that a lot.
Yeah, she never lost the human connection that you have to have at the Capitol to work with some people that you really, really, really disagree with. But she never lost the humanity in others. She was an incredible baker. I know that, the cookie season in the House caucus around Christmas time, um, she always brought in cookies. She loved a good margarita. I think I've shared she's one of the first elected people officials I met, but right when she got elected to the House, I was 15 and I was a student senator at Osseo Senior High, and she actually came and spoke with us um, before she was sworn in, and that really impacted me. And so she's just been a figure in my personal political interest in life since I was a teenager, and it continues to feel unreal. And I do, in this time where we are struggling to find the humanity in others, and the gravity of the issues that we are discussing as a society, as a community, she was one to do that, and so I will miss that a lot.
Very nice. Allison?
All right, my national story. Um, I wanted to talk about just as we're getting ready for the swearing in, but just the impact that mayor-elect in New York has had, I think, just on our national politics and our party politics and our the just kind of the changing of the tides and frankly a generational shift and change within Democratic politics. So Zoran Mandami, who was a former assembly member from New York and the city, and is going to be the 111th mayor coming up here in January. And he will be the first Muslim, the first South Asian mayor in the city of New York. And he is a stated, member of the DSA, the Democratic Socialists, and he ran on a agenda with like 5 consistent themes: housing affordability, labor and wages, access to public transit, looking more at the progressive taxation and investment in public things like grocery stores or other life needs that potentially the government should be providing. And then the last was universal free childcare, which is kind of funny. I'm now old enough to remember in 2013 during the mayor election in New York when that was also like the top thing, and they passed pre-K. So some of my New York political friends and I were feeling very old during this election because some of these things were just repeating from the last decade. But I am incredibly impressed by the campaign that he ran and the confidence and just the accessibility and normalcy that he brings to ideas that some people find either scary or too big or too complex or just too weighty. And just this positive approach, an optimistic approach that public goods can and should and continue to be. That the Democrats should move back to our kind of core mission as a party, that we've lost over the last few decades, but focusing on making sure people's basic needs are met. And I really appreciate again, just his charisma and optimism that he brings to politics and just to addressing people's problems. So, because I think we need more of that. And there's a lot of really amazing people who have done incredible service into the government, into public life, into the public sector. But I think the messaging or the approaches of the past just are not what people are looking for moving forward. And I think Zoran represents that.
I think the word that I use is authentic, and I don't know the man. I don't know if he is full of crap or not. But I think that it's why Bernie Sanders had a run. Trump, to a certain extent, in 2015, people thought they were authentic. They made that authentic connection, and I think that he has done that. And I mean, for anyone who isn't a DSA supporter, they didn't really have that many good choices in New York. I mean, you're gonna pick the Cuomo and anyway. So I think that this will be a tremendously good political science experiment. If any of these, if he can get some of these items across the finish line, and then we'll actually know, are they horrendous ideas like some of us think, or are there merit to them? So I guess I look forward to see what happens.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a good story to flag because it also just marks shift off for on the Democratic side that like there was such hysteria around from the establishment around his candidacy, and then hysteria and then weird, bizarre behavior. You had what's the senator from New York? I'm blanking on her name right now. Gillibrand.
Schumer?
Gillibrand. Kristen Gillibrand, who people in Minnesota remember as the leader of the crusade to get Al Franken to resign, but like she endorsed like many times a credibly accused sexual harasser, Mario Cuomo. I mean, not Mario. Mario's his dad, who was awesome.
R.I.P. Mario.
Andrew, R.I.P. Mario. Mario, as they called him, as he called himself, uh, um, but yeah, just and Schumer never endorsed Zohran, and it's just like I it speaks to the problem that I think we'll continue to have on the left of our gerontocracy. That we have a Democratic Party where like there's a general problem in Washington about like of people not moving on and not creating space for others' leadership, but it is objectively particularly like worse on the Democratic side. It's bad. It's bad everywhere. And like but it's worse. So, like there's a reason why the three special elections we had right here, I think it was three last year that resulted from deaths of members of Congress were all Democrats. Yeah.
Well, and I have always been a opponent of term limits. I think people should be able to vote for whatever dumb candidate they want, but I'm melting on it a little bit because Congress is proving that it is not policing itself, and the electorate is not policing themselves.
I have to say, I'm kind of like I feel the same. I have felt the same way about term limits, and also feel that determination melting a little bit because
Ever since I became a lobbyist, I'm like, oh, get rid of have term limits. I'll just become more powerful.
see, this is the problem.
Yeah.
And to be clear, that is the problem.
This is the problem. Yeah.
Yeah, term limits, you lose a lot of institutional knowledge, so you got to be careful who's sticking around with that knowledge. But just real quick on and wrapping up Zoran, um, I, yes, he's the mayor. He's the mayor of the largest city of the United States. It's, has a larger population than so many states themselves. But it's also so symbolic around international diplomacy as well, with the headquarters of the UN there. And so I've just always thought of New York as just kind of at the intersection of local government, but also international diplomacy too, because of just what it stands for as being, the entrance point for so many families who have come to America through immigration. So I am excited to see what his leadership brings, or just even the conversation and tones and framing that he brings to a lot of issues that I think the Democratic Party could learn a lot from in either doing better around the policy or at least communicating better around them. So,
Javier?
Yeah, so I think we're gonna both do the same Minnesota stories. Maybe we could go back and forth on that and then do national or something. But
Sure.
But the big Minnesota story I think of is in politics is one that is in the headlines across the country literally right now, and that is the fraud story. Or fraud stories, I should say, because they are different from each other, but also like are being lumped together. And I have to say, so this is an issue where I am like so deeply frustrated, like top to bottom. On the one hand, people who steal, people from nonprofit who are running nonprofits, charities. They're called charities because people give them money tax free in order to do good works. This is part of the social compact we've had for a very long time. And people who steal from nonprofits are stealing literally from the poor. And so, like, I want to say, unequivocally that the only acceptable amount of fraud is zero. And also, it is really clear to me that, like in the current situation we have now with we have Speaker Demuth asked the federal government to halt all child care payments in Minnesota. So lots and lots and lots of families are going to be impacted. And and it is a direct result of the Republican caucus working with a YouTuber who went to two daycare centers that were already closed by the state, and one intends and it later said they were intending to reopen, but they've been sanctioned for and there's actually no allegation of fraud there. The issues having to do with them are with training, with like the safety of the facilities and things like that. Like on this issue, we're really, I think, seeing the like and going to see the really insane impacts that we have when we with a broad stroke punish everyone for the acts of a few people. And in this case, it's going to be the many parents who depend on child care subsidies to be able to, to work, to be able to go to work. We have a Republican led committee, fraud committee in the House that has done nothing, including like not even giving a hearing to a bill to beef up Medicaid and Medicaid fraud enforcement in the AG's office. The Medicaid fraud enforcement is the one part of in criminal law that the Attorney General's office has original jurisdiction in. And they've filed tons of cases and won them and won money back from this for the state. But the current, when I started saying like so like depressed today because the state of our media is such that something went, a story went viral. And because it went viral, there was this huge reaction, and it's on all the news and all this. It's based on flawed information, like I think purposely flawed. They're also apparently like created Google phone numbers so that they could call and make it sound like they were not getting calls back, but they were fake numbers. This is just like when we entrust news to just like anybody who has no standards, that those kind of things will happen. But that's where we're at, right? Is that like YouTubers have more influence than than mainstream journalists, and mainstream journalists, rather than fight that, are just going along, being taken for the ride with the YouTubers. So it's a sad state of affairs. It's I also, and I do not think that Democrats have handled this well. I don't think the governor has handled it well. We should have taken the reins on this a lot sooner, both in terms of perception and in terms of the actual facts of it. But two things can be true. One, that like, no amount of fraud is acceptable. But they're also just wildly overstated things. The stuff that the U.S. attorney has said, you said like that, like billions of dollars. There's no evidence that there's anything that big in terms of fraud of the numbers that he has given. People have said that this is only happening in Minnesota. That's not true. That the government no longer tracks. There used to be a website that was run by the U.S. government that had that tracked COVID fraud, because there were big cases in Texas and California and elsewhere. The right-wing YouTubers are not interested in going after Texas or any of the red states where there was fraud. But we're wildly overstating some things. But then on the one hand, and then on the other, you can't really like say that without it sounding like you're wanting to minimize what the cases in Minnesota. So it's a very frustrating catch-22 that I'm hoping we can work our way out of, both in substance and in messaging.
Well, and Javier and I were both choosing this as one of our selections, and I thought that possibly we'd be going at it at different directions, and really largely we're not, which is good to hear because I think that I agree with almost everything that Javier said, and I mean, I guess for the Democrats, I understand how it's difficult to kind of say, well, it's not 18 billion, it's not 9 billion, it's not 2 billion, it's 800,000, 800 million. Well, whatever that number is, it's a high number. We know that it's a high number because 300 of it already was determined with feeding our future. And um, nonprofits, and I get that if you're not working in the government space, this is probably a foreign concept to you. And I don't say that like in an elitist kind of way, but like the better term for them is private sector partners. Because what happens is the state gives money to nonprofits to do the work that the state can't do. And if you have a problem with that, then what you're saying is we should hire more state employees. And guess what? I'm sure you'll have a problem with that as well. So the key is not to turn off the spigot to all nonprofits because many of them have been around for decades and decades and decades, have great track records, have measures in place to make sure that there isn't fraud, or if there is fraud, that it's caught. We saw at the Capitol, this is just based on feeding our future, not on the housing stabilization or the autism centers or the child care centers. But, we saw last year that Republicans and Democrats had a completely different idea on how they wanted to fund programs based on what had happened with feeding our future. And that was to the detriment of many nonprofits. And some of our listeners might say, well, good. But as I just explained, somebody needs to do the work. And that is largely not going to be done by government employees, nor probably should it. But it is also weird to kind of see how Tim Walz is choosing, and I know that Tim Walz isn't on the same page as many of the other elected Democrats on many things, but on this, I I don't understand why he's handling it the way he is. I think he's doing it very much to his own detriment, if not to the detriment of the state of Minnesota. So that doesn't. I don't understand that a ton. And as far as Nick Shirley goes, who's the right wing YouTuber, first of all, I don't really believe anything that I see on YouTube or Twitter or any of that stuff because all of it is manufactured outrage. Not all of it, but most of it is manufactured outrage. I think that he is shining a spotlight on something that is real. Maybe not at the exact places he was at, maybe it was, but I think he is highlighting something that is real that I think those of us who are in and around government know there is fraud going on. And it's stupid and lazy to try to blame a whole segment of people for it. And Donald Trump gave the Democrats just a gift by making it about the Somali population here in Minnesota and the United States instead of on the actual fraud. Because I truly believe when the feds and state and local law enforcement really kind of dig into this again or continue to, that they're going to find lots and lots and lots of legit fraud. So there's no reason to say, oh, everybody's garbage, everyone send them all back. We don't need to do that. Fraud is real. Is there an interesting connection to the East African community? Yes. Are they the only ones? Absolutely not. And we saw that with Feeding Our Future, where the ringleader was Amy Bach, and who is a white lady, and all of that. But it's something that we have big budgets, and we still have needs. And if we are tolerating fraud either by nefarious means or by incompetence, we are denying the services that that the lowest of the low, that the social safety net is there to protect. And if you believe in a social safety net, this money is slated to go to those who need it the most. And if it's not going there, then that is definitely a tragedy. And the feds, I think they're doing the right thing for the wrong reasons in some ways. They are having a hearing on January 7th, where I understand that Kristen Robbins, Walter Hudson, and Marion Rarick will be testifying on Minnesota. And I applaud anybody who is able to figure out how we can put better controls on the people's money and be better stewards of it, because this unfortunately isn't over. And it'll have interesting electoral implications both in Minnesota and in other states where this is starting to be rooted out. So with that, I'll go give it back to Allison if she wants to weigh in, or if Javier wants to keep going.
Yeah, there's not much that I have to say that you two have not said, but I just want to re-emphasize, as a Democrat who believes in a strong social safety net, the worst thing that can happen is fraud and corruption in public systems and with public money. It is. I can't remember if I told the story on this podcast already, so I apologize. But a former Obama staffer who worked really closely with him in 2010 to 2012, he said the angriest he had ever seen President Obama was during the launch of the of the ACA website, and it crashed. And he was the most upset he had seen the president was around the crashing of the website when it was supposed to launch, because he's like, if people do not think it is legitimate or that it works, it ruins everything. People have to have faith in the government. And when we start to lose faith in our government of being stewards of money and standing up programs that are really that are frankly susceptible to fraud. So many of these programs that have been susceptible to fraud or have fraud connected to them are Medicaid billing programs. They're not like your typical state grant program, which I realize is wonky and a little gray. But we know how to put in controls and compliance measures to guard money better than this, but so many of these Medicaid programs, and a lot of them aren't nonprofits. A lot of them are LLCs. A lot of them are like small businesses that just pop up because you can be a Medicaid service provider, and be a for-profit business. That is not against the law. But there's just a lot more lax controls over them because of the state and the federal nature of them. And that's what's been frustrating for me as someone who represents a lot of nonprofits who do human services work. It's truly under the Reagan administration that they decided to shut down a lot of publicly run and staffed institutions and make them community-based organizations and kind of rely on the nonprofit public-private model. So it's really, again, kind of a Reagan policy that we're in this where we are today. And I think nonprofits are unfairly getting a brunt of, like, we hear fraud and you hear nonprofit. It's like, no, it's a lot more than that. And but every time we're trying to explain a dissertation to a very clear problem, we're losing. So I hope that Democrats can be a little stronger in the disavowance and also just acknowledge where the weaknesses and vulnerabilities are.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the only thing that I'll add to is one of the misnomers is that local press hasn't been looking into this. They have, and they have for a number of years. Lou Raguse and KSTP and other people have been on this for a year plus. We know that. You can Google it. You can find it. I think that it's getting a little goose right now, and that's probably a good thing, even if it's hard to figure out what's right and what's wrong. But I think largely what we all have to look at in our government, because Allison's right, you have to have belief in your institutions, is that in some ways just got to get our shit together. Because Carol Levin followed 4 different ongoing investigations for child care fraud. None of them resulted in charges, and the BCA told KARE 11, because largely they couldn't get the documentation that they needed from the state of Minnesota. And with the Quality Learning Center, or Leering Center, Tiki Brown, the commissioner, said that they had closed, and they said that they've never closed. This is just not giving people confidence. And we need that in our institutions, not just here, in many different places. And it is eroding faster than any of us are comfortable with. So, Javier?
So, on to fun topics like Nazis. So for the national story, that thing that I wanted to highlight, which I would put this in the category not of like the biggest story of the year, but one that I think deserves more attention, and that will be a continuing problem. Starting out by referencing a story that appeared in the Bulwark on December 22nd. About and it's their write-up of a focus group that was done by the Manhattan Institute. The Manhattan Institute is a fairly mainstream conservative think tank, and they are a think tank that went from being sort of, like a lot on the right, like Heritage Foundation and others, went from being anti-Trump to being lukewarm on Trump to being very pro-Trump. They did a focus group of young Republicans, and the thing that jumps out at you if you read the transcript of the focus group is just like the positive feelings that these young Republicans were expressing about topics such as Hitler, white nationalism, Nick Fuentes, and their opinion on Jews. It was just really a free-flowing free-for-all on things that make people of my generation sort of jump and cringe, because we used to have agreement on things such as like that the fascists in World War II were the bad guys, and it was a good thing that they were defeated. And now you have like this. You have the leaked messages of the young Republican chat that had that was not that young. The age span was from college to 40. That story that from, I think it was from this. From October, that Politico covered of this chat, where also there were all these young Republicans who were praising Hitler and fascism and such, and this sort of comes. We also saw this last year that the Mehdi Hassan Jubilee internet debate with all these young conservatives, which at the time seemed like outliers, but now there's just like accumulating evidence that something is taking over, particularly the young Republicans, the kind of people who go to CPAC right now. The right is consumed in a fight between really luminaries of the right, people like Candace Owens and Tucker Carlson. Tucker Carlson had Nick Fuentes on his show. And it generated this big debate about the Groypers, who, if for people who don't know, Groypers are what the Nick Fuentes followers call themselves, or what he calls them, about how much the mainstream conservatism should embrace Groypers, who are explicitly racist and explicitly white nationalist. That's an actual debate happening, that you have Ben Shapiro on one side, like saying to these folks, like, we need to rid the party of anti-Semitism. And then a lot of people just saying, no, like, Jews actually are evil. And it is a frightening thing how mainstreamed this conversation has become, and that it's actually now it's debatable whether it's okay to hate all Jews and or black people or brown people, or it's debatable to say that the country should be all white, or should have less brown people, which is all sentiments that are expressed in these. And it's a sign of just, I think, further, the further spiral, this downward spiral that sadly I've been talking about on this podcast for like the better part of the 11 years that we've been on the air, of feeling that we were descending into a complete dissolution of civil society. I've yet to feel I've yet to feel like that feeling that has been contradicted. I think things seem to be getting worse, and now we're adding on to that political violence. So that to me is just a story to like this fracturing within the right, and the role that young extreme right-wing conservatives are going to have in the future of the Republican Party, and what it's going to look like and what it's going to mean for the rest of the country is really going to be something to watch for us all.
Well, as a former young Republican, but I was much more of a college Republican. Leadership is something that I think is being sorely lacking in many different areas in the political sphere. I think that we are getting a certain type of Republican that is going to caucuses. We're getting a certain type of Republican that is engaging online, and there are, on the wide spectrum of Republicans, we're not getting alternative voices. Just an example from my own life: when I was in college, there were precinct caucuses for George H.W. Bush's second term. Yes, that's how old I am. And I was convening one of the caucuses, and everybody in my caucus room was in favor of Pat Buchanan. And so I'm like, well, okay, well, I didn't want to be the one who wasn't, so I supported Pat Buchanan. I made the paper somewhere in the Mankato Free Press somewhere, I think. And that wasn't because it was my real opinion. And now, knowing that going up against a sitting U.S. president is pretty naive and stupid, but a lot of times that's what younger people are, unless they get good mentorship, good leadership. And one of the things that and I'm stopping so far short of saying that the Republican Party is a wing of the Nazi Party, but one thing that this podcast has done for me has exposed me to many, many, many different groups of people that I just would not have encountered in my daily life. And it doesn't mean necessarily that I agree with them, but it does humanize them, which makes it a lot harder to call them evil. I think that with the separation of society that we have, whether it's racial, whether it's economic, whether it's pick your reason, I think that we're not like, speaking from Republicans, we don't have enough gay friends, we don't have enough brown friends, we don't have enough people who have struggled financially, and that is something that it's contributing to the echo chamber. And if you get one super loud, charismatic asshole in college and outside of college, you can get followers, and that's where some of this is going. Anything to add, or sorry?
I was just saying, Allison, anything to add, or should we?
No, yes. I just I mean, I'm in my mid-30s, and I have seen um just like the brainwashing almost that of some of my friends and people in my life who kind of exclusively just watch YouTube, and the way that their YouTube algorithm feeds them things, and then they start asking questions that they think are not offensive or maybe a little provocative, but because it's just been reinforced so continuously, it feels normal to them. And I mean, being asked questions about like, well, what about like should women really have the exclusive right to vote, or like should it be, more like a assigned to the family unit? Like that is coming up in my daily conversations, not with political people, but with just friends and acquaintances, and just kind of just this shift towards xenophobic accepting kind of xenophobic policies. And I think, though, the theme between the right and the left, particularly of young men, are just feeling the lack of hope, the lack of optimism, the lack, whether it be in finding a life partner and starting a family, whether it be in securing a job that they feel is, gonna provide them with economic security. And like it truly is. I'm bordering on using the word epidemic, but there is something very serious going on with a very vulnerable, frankly, a very vulnerable group that is being um, successfully infiltrated by a lot of YouTube algorithms. And that's my thing with like Charlie Kirk is like when he passed, it was so clear to me that, there are so many people that their sense of reality is completely different than mine. And that is frustrating, but like, I have more empathy for where they're at because like their reality is just different, but it scares me a lot.
Yeah. No, I think the epidemic of loneliness is real, and
Yeah, it is.
and I I think we need to take it or seriously in general, right? It's I think everything from gun violence to like sexual violence to like a lot of this extremism that we're seeing. We had 2 years of pandemic that kept a lot of people, and especially young people in this generation, like were really traumatized by not being social, not being able to be social, and then we have a politics right now for whom the epidemic of loneliness, it works to their advantage. Like the extreme right wingers have no interest in getting people talking to each other face to face. They're fine. And anyone who's listening to a podcast 3 hours a day for 4 days a week that is someone who has headphones on and is interacting with no other human beings. And that's just humans are social beings. We are social animals, and it's not a good thing. Yeah, but it's like gone are I like you were saying, Allison. I think we used to joke about the incels, and it seemed sort of ridiculous and silly, and now there's like it's a whole generation of like one of the complaints you hear in a lot of these focus groups and stuff is like guys who can't find anyone to date, because they've either lost their social skills or their beliefs are so out there that no that women don't want to date them. So it's a real thing.
All right. Well, I'm going to end us on a little bit of a more uplifting note.
Oh, good.
A
A
little
little
bit.
bit.
So in May of this year, remember May? Remember May?
No,
It's
No,
gonna be
never
May.
mind.
literally no.
Yeah.
Not
In
my.
May, 1.4 billion Catholics worldwide got a new spiritual leader. And that was Robert Francis Prevost, who is the first North American, but certainly American person to ever have the title of Pope. And he chose Pope Leo the 14th as his Pope name. I'm not Catholic, else I don't know all the right nomenclatures, but I did grow up in Chicago, a Chicago suburb, where in the particular suburb, the area that I lived in was very Irish and very Irish Catholic. I went to a very tiny public school. All my friends went to the big Catholic school. I went to a tiny Lutheran church, out back by the quarry in town, and it was definitely we were different. We were different. But I am excited that Pope Leo is from Chicago, which is super cool. And I wanted to highlight a quote from John Malone, who is from Flossmoor, Illinois, which is not that far from where I grew up. And what his quote was, "He's already helped the Bears, and we're hoping he does the same for the Sox." Well, there are limits to miracles, and I don't know that he's going to be able to help the Sox, but he definitely has helped the Bears, who won the NFC Central for the NFC North for the first time in a very long time. So I think it's good. Not when a pope dies, and the previous pope didn't die, but to remind ourselves how these procedures work. And one of the things that I think Pope Leo is trying to do is he's trying to get Catholics to be better Catholics. And I think that if everybody was just trying to be better people, that our society would not be as doom and gloom and gross and disheartening as it is right now. So obviously, whether it's through your religion, whether it's through volunteering, whether it's through whatever, find, and this kind of ties in a little bit with the previous topic, but find groups of people that you can have fun with, that have different views than you do, but that you can build respect for. And I think that is something that in 2026, I hope that right after we cross off, go to the gym more, that be a better person is pretty high on that list. So that's kind of all I have. We're probably coming up on time, but anything that you guys want to add to that?
I'm a big fan of Pope Leo. And I was worried about your angle on him until I remembered, oh, we like Chicago. Of course. It's a sport. It's a sports. It's actually a sport.
I snuck in sports ball and social justice. We'll talk about that somewhere else.
Yeah.
I love Pope Leo. This year on Christmas Eve, my family, we got home, we were too tired to leave again and go to candlelight service. So we actually ended up streaming Pope Leo's first Christmas Eve Mass from the Vatican. And it was so beautiful. He gave a wonderful homily, but it incorporated different just Catholics from all over the world who shared in their home language prayers, and it was just a reminder that faith can bring so many people together, and it was a beautiful thing. Highly recommend streaming that. So
I just say so. I did go to a mass on Christmas Eve. I won't say where because it's a church that is a heavily Latino church. And I went with a friend who attends regularly. I was not ready for how empty. I've been to that church before quite a few times, and it's packed to the rafters, packed with young families, packed with children running around. It's always very joyous, and it was empty. It was empty. And the priest made note of it, and that made note of the fear that many families are feeling that are keeping them home. And this is fear experienced not just by undocumented people, but people, families of mixed status, or also just citizens, because now, thanks to Justice Kavanaugh, their Kavanaugh stops allow people to be targeted by their appearance and by the language they speak. It was. I like the second I walked in the church, I could not stop crying. It was like so intense. So, yeah. Sorry, Brian. You started on. I took it right back down.
If we were playing Uno, you reversed it.
Yes.
We got to wrap it up, but does anybody have any what's the word? Plugs? Yeah, any plugs?
I am performing this Friday at Crooners at 6 p.m.
I love crooners.
Yes, I am with a comedy show called Comedy Through the Chaos, and I am doing storytelling on that.
Awesome.
Well,
2026 is going to be a really big year for Pisces. So I'm going to give a shout out to that, to me, to Venus moving out of my sign for the first time in 14 years. And it's going to be a blessed, blessed year. That's my plug.
I don't know what that means, but that's awesome.
It's a plug for Allison having a better year in 2026.
I didn't know Venus was so horrible, but you can tell me about it later.
way to make it weird. Amy and I are on the Bob Sansbury Show every Tuesday, every other Friday. Amy, and then I usually fill in, are on the Al Travis Show. And Allison is starting to work on that program as well.
Every Wednesday at 9 a.m. Al has me on as a token Democrat, so it's been fun.
Anyway, so we just want to thank everybody for sticking with us. I think we're going to be entering our 12th year next year of the podcast, and hope everybody has a very happy and safe New Year's Eve and a prosperous new year. So with that, I am ready to go to bed, and GOP strategist Brian McDaniel.
I am Democratic strategist and the Puerto Rican heat, Javier Murillo.
I am wishing you the happiest and healthiest new year, Allison Nessie.
And we are
Wrong
about everything.
Take us away, Gabe.